Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mark Loeffler Experience. Another great show here for you today. We got Robby Clark in. Robby Clark is an entrepreneur. He's a former child TV star, and whatever that entails. We might go down that road. He runs a couple very successful businesses. He owns a heck of a lot of real estate, and yeah, we're just gonna hang out and chat today. How does that sound?
Oh, I'm excited for it. I know.
I think we're gonna lose 50% of the people right there when I said, "Oh, we're just gonna hang out and chat."
Yeah.
People, okay, well, we don't need to listen to this anymore. What is a former child star going to teach me about building wealth?
Yeah, well, hopefully a lot. It's funny, I was actually excited to come here and talk to Mark today, because for those of you who don't know, Mark is very established and done quite a lot in his relatively short time. Like, he's done things, not to just prop you up here. I know you're here, but honestly, I've been excited for this because I've heard a lot of great things about you. We've met before, but I wanted to kind of dig in and let you know what I do, and then hear more about you as well too. So I'm excited to be here.
For those of you who don't know, what did you do as a kid?
Oh, okay, so yeah, I mean, without that, I might not be an entrepreneur and in real estate. But from about 11 to 18 years old, I grew up in the film industry. I starred in half dozen different shows, 20, 30 different movies.
What would we have seen you in?
Zach Files was one of the first large shows that I had. Yeah, it was a YTV Fox Family. I was Zach and was on that for a couple of years. Then I had some shows, Strange Days at Blake Holsey High, that were on Discovery, and more teenage and kid shows as well too. I did a lot of movies. Prize winner, Defiance, Ohio, with Woody Harrelson, Julianne Moore. Superstar with Will Ferrell, Molly Shannon. I worked with the Olsen twins on Switching Goals. So a lot of stuff that people may or may not have seen, but I did that. That was pretty much my childhood. So because of that, I didn't have much education, formal education, which was fine. I grew up around adults, and I felt like that had its own advantages. I also had the advantage of being able to think that I could do whatever I wanted, because as an actor, especially when you're a lead actor, everybody's doing everything for you, whether that's good or bad. You want a sandwich, is there. You want, I'd have people going to Sugar Mountain 2 days a week just to grab candy to keep me, And I was a good kid, but, it changes your perspective and makes you feel special, which is really good, but also can get some bad habits in there.
Coke wasn't, though.
No hard drugs. Yeah, no hard drugs. It was more just, too cool for school vibes, and I was focused in acting. That's why I was initially successful. But the transition, when I was about 15, 16, I started caring more about girls and being cool and money and things like that, or I thought I had a bunch of money, so I didn't need to listen to anybody. So I didn't really go to high school because I was filming. I think I not graduated, but had 5 credits or so once I completed. And I was doing schooling on set, but it's very different. And after grade 9, I knew I was like, I'm gonna act or do whatever. This is not what I'm gonna do. But because I lost some momentum and dedication at about 15 years old, I had residual effect where for 2 to 3 years I was still working. Then I went to LA. Didn't do too much, was on guest starred in Veronica Mars. But I didn't really care. And at the time, and again, I was more into partying and training mixed martial arts. That's my passion. Love that sport. And at the time, I was really looking to compete. And that took over my focus, which no matter how much, you pretend that you want something, if your focus is somewhere else, it's not going to add up. And so
I just want to stop you right there, because that's a key point right there, right? Like, you're dropping gold already. Like, I mean, if you lose your focus, then like what is your focus, right? If you're focused on your job, then maybe the real estate side's going to suffer. Or if you're focused on this, maybe your relationship's going to suffer. Like you lost focus on acting, MMA, or partying and partying, and you lost like. That went away, right?
Absolutely. And I'll give you a prime example, which I think is good. So I was fortunate enough to grow up with Aubrey Graham, who's Drake now, right? We had the same agent growing up. And so I knew him for about 4 or 5 years during that period. And relatively, like, I would go to set. My brother was filming there at the time, and hang out with some of the people there. But I really liked him because we had similarities. We loved basketball. He loved athletes. We kind of had that same vibe in that regard, but he was so respectful. But one of the things I always noticed about him, at that point I was already getting into my I'm a little too cool phase, and he was so dedicated all the time to working. So he didn't have that, like, he was hungry, and you could see it. And you knew, you don't know some guy's gonna be the biggest guy in the world, right? But you knew he was special. And I always liked that about him. And I remember him being like, he's got this interview once where he was still on Degrassi, and he's like, oh, I got an Acura. He's like, because I can't afford a BMW, right? And he was honest about that. But this is a guy who was out on weekends. Everybody would tell this. It's like, oh, Drake, especially if anybody says anything, you're like, you don't understand this kid. I knew him when he was a kid when I wasn't focused. This kid was working harder than everybody else. And I knew once he got signed, it's like, nobody's going to match that guy from what he's coming with.
One of my favorite lines, hard work beat talent any day of the week, right? So if you're willing to put in the hard work, I don't care how talented you are, you'll make it.
Yeah.
Right?
Lady Luck likes to hang with people who work hard too. So yeah, 100% agree with that.
All right. So you're 18 years old. You're in LA. You're not acting anymore.
No, I'm having fun. I'm partying. I'm, in the kind of the cool crowd there, going to clubs and hanging with Hillary Duff and these cool people. And so I had a lot of great experiences out there, but I really just spent a bunch of money. And then I wound up having to come home because I didn't have much left. I still kind of wanted to act, but I had a hatred for the industry, which means you're not going to get any work.
Yeah.
And so by 21, 22... you
were washed up.
I was washed up. I was done. I was in over my head. Now, 21, 22, that I wasn't getting anything. I wound up getting hit with a tax bill from excess contributions to my RSPs as a kid, which I didn't know about. At the time, I'd already drained my RSP funds and spent it wherever. And I was like, how is this possible? I was 11 years old. Well, at the time, I was making so much money. The union actually wasn't set up where I guess they had a limiter. And my accountant was apparently not a good accountant and missed it. So they were over-contributing. Of course, in my worst lows of my lows, I get a bill. And it was only, 30, 40,000 at the time. I say only, that was a ton of money for me at the time. And I didn't know. I was like, guys, I have nothing left. How can I even know? But I couldn't even afford the right counsel to tell me, like, no, this is illegal. It was done through a third party. You were 12 years old. Of course, you don't know the money, which I, found out later. But because I had no options, I actually wound up filing for bankruptcy at the my low 20s. And it was the only out I thought I had. And started serving tables at that point, which, again, for me was a huge shift. Like going from the coolest guy, I might not be the coolest guy. I thought I was the coolest guy. It didn't matter. But, to go from there to serving tables, even when people came in, it was a hit to my pride. And I had to take a step back and remove myself from any kind of egos there. And that's when I started. You got a great book right there, Rich Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. At 24, 25, I still knew I had goals. I knew where I was going to be. When I was a kid playing baseball, I'm like, I'm going to be in the major leagues. When I was an actor, I'm going to be a celebrity. I've always had that dedication no matter what I'm doing. When I was bartending, I was the best bartender in the city. The education started for me around 24, 25, reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and these other books. And that's where my true education came from. And my biggest thing over the past, I'm 33 now, so over the past, 8 years really has been outread people. And one of my secrets has not actually been reading physical books as much anymore. It's putting an audio on 1.5 or 1 3/4 speed. And whether I'm drove from Tobermory here. My girlfriend wasn't too happy, but we had 3 hours of an audiobook on the way here, right? So, and I'm kidding. She was working, she reads too. But that's been a key for me because the more you learn and read and can really then take action from there, because some people read and never take action.
Yep.
Read and take action, and reading changes your context. It's not that I can remember exactly what book I got where from all the time, but it changes your decision making without you knowing it. And I know, I feel like I'm the same person, but if I were to have a conversation with myself, even 2 years ago, it's different people because I've learned so much during that time. And then I've made a ton of mistakes because I'll act on everything. So I make more mistakes. Last thing I'll say, a really good book called Thinking in Bets that I recently read, which my agent recommended to me. It's done by, I think, Annie Duke. I might be mispronouncing her. Yeah, the poker player. Yeah. The female. Yeah. Amazing. She is also a business consultant. And she gives a really good approach to saying, everything is really a bet, but it's like a calculated bet. And so when she talks to entrepreneurs or business leaders, she's like, whatever you're throwing out there, these are like little bets. But you're hedging each one, and there's a really interesting way to view things because I certainly take more bets than most people, and that's what gets you further along, right? And you obviously want to be careful with the bets that you make. You're not trying to be crazy, but this isn't heads or tails either. Yeah. If you're in business, there's more. Well,
it's calculated, right? Like that okay, if I do this is a 3-to-1 odd, and I can bet this on 3-to-1 odds or. This is a 10-to-1. This is a little bit of a long shot, so maybe we'll only put this in. I've never read the book. I never even heard of it till now, but I do like Annie Duke as a poker player, so maybe I'm going to check that out. Yeah, I'll grab that on audio.
I was impressed. My agent was trying to summarize it for me, and I was like, yeah, all right. And then I can't re-explain it as good as it was. I was very impressed with the book she wrote.
So you're bartending. You're 25 years old. You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
It's good. Yeah. I love how you remember where I left off because I don't. Yeah. It's good. So
too much sugar in your teens.
Yeah. 25 years old. So I kept bartending still for another year or so. after that. And I got to say, that experience itself, I worked at a bar called 10 Restaurant and Wine Bar in Mississauga, Port Credit. The owner there was great to me. My buddy was actually the one who connected me and hooked me up with a job. I had a lot of learning experiences there as well, too. And I'll tell you why. Because we're on Mississauga Road, so we have access to a lot of wealthy people, and we have access to a lot of less wealthy people, poor people, let's say. Yeah. And I noticed that the education or smartness didn't really matter. I met some very wealthy people who I was like, you don't seem that sharp, but he thought he could be well off. And sure enough, he was.
And he worked hard. And
he definitely worked hard. That's definitely a prerequisite. But I saw very smart people and very poor people or worse economic situations that were very smart and very, you would think, stupid. Maybe uneducated is the right word. And same goes for the other spectrum. So that, again, continued to harness my feelings that a lot of this has to deal in your head. But like an athlete, you got to give yourself the confidence and feed yourself in order to feel that way, which I do through books and action.
Wow. A lot of people just don't understand money. I find, it's funny, I taught a course to real estate investors, and I basically said, well, you guys understand how the banks make money, right? And nobody in the room knew how banks make money. And I'm like, how do you not know this? Like, this is common sense. Like, to me it is, right? Because, I mean, I've taken a lot of these courses. I've read so many books on this type of thing, right? So if you guys don't know how the banks make money, Google it, start reading about that, because, once you figure out, that's the key, right?
It's so key. I actually posted about that this morning because something I thought about, and sometimes I try to go back to, how did you think 8 years ago? Maybe you didn't, because you didn't. Like, I remember taking my first Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar. It was just one of those free ones they had, and they made it seem so...
Was it Darren Weeks?
I would have been, it's got to be, the name sounds familiar, but it was years ago, in Toronto.
It was in Toronto, it was Darren Weeks.
Okay, yeah.
Because I might have been there.
Yeah, okay, there you go, yeah. But they made it seem so easy. Yeah. And we knew, and you're like, but now it's like, okay, well, because you understand it, it's education, right? You play chess, you get good at chess.
Well, it's so funny. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I went out and bought a couple properties, and then came back and I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad again, and I'm like, that's what he was talking about. Oh, right.
Yeah.
And so I reread it every year, and it's always a different book for me.
Yeah.
Same with Richest Man in Babylon. I reread it every year.
That's a great book, too.
January 1st, it's like, okay, reread Richest Man in Babylon.
And I like to say that I consider myself a macro thinker, but also philosophy. And I haven't taken either of those in school, so I could be wrong what that even means. But that's the way I view myself, and I like to look at things. But I can tell Richest Man in Babylon, or even any of those renditions, they're the same. Those are more philosophy, like a little bit of philosophy in there, where it's like some of them seem a little far-fetched to people, but they really do help. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my engineer Igor, he had said what he loves about Rich Dad, Poor Dad is it's actually a easy read, but it's a fun book.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like anybody can do it. Yeah. So that's the first book I recommend to everybody, even if they have negative connotations towards it, which means change your head, you're probably off to a bad start.
Yeah.
That is the book I recommend because it's super easy to digest. So 25, 26.
So it was you figured out it was a mindset.
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. 100%. So what did you do with your new mindset?
So I started applying it. I actually started a healthy vending company at first with a couple partners, and then a landscaping company as well too, while still working at the restaurant to try and get something off the ground. And I was a terrible saver, so I always kind of knew I'm going to have to create, right? That just saving was going to be too difficult.
I'm not a very good saver either.
It's terrible, right? My parent company is called SID, so it stands for Spend, Invest, Diversify, because I'm not a saver. So it's, I've worked it into my adage. It's not that I don't believe in it, but back to your point on creating money and how it goes, I did a post this morning where I was just like, people don't understand this simple logic. Even if I get a break even on my renovations, if I have a $400,000 home and I put $100,000 into it, like a normal homeowner for my own home, well, I still paid $100,000 out to contractors, supplies, the city, whatever it might be. But that $100,000 is still there. So you just printed money in the economy. So that's what renovations are doing. You're printing money in the economy, and there's no bigger. I think we're at $8 trillion worth of real estate in Canada, which is 75% of the entire manufacturing industry worldwide. Nothing as big as real estate in the entire world. So that's where a lot of the printing and money comes into cities, and leads to my macro views on the cities that we invest in, really doing our best to fluff them up and bring them to the price of build. Because it's my firm belief that every city in any developed world where the cost to build, where real estate is under the price of build, they're in a recessionary environment. Mm-hmm. You go above, they're in a speculative environment. Like, this is more of a speculative because now we're starting to speculate over the price of land. And what is the value of this land? No longer labor and lumber. you need that labor and lumber to reach that consent. You need to reach that price. So when we go to places like St. Catharines, which is doing much better now, but now in Sudbury, for instance, you're like, I know that I'm picking up on a macro sense these homes at half the cost to build. So you can't tell me they're undervalued.
Yep.
I know they're undervalued. Just because the market hasn't gone up in 20, 25 years, I can tell you labor has, I can tell you lumber has, and there's a lot of other reasons we're there as well. But that's my view, and now I take it more seriously where we're consolidating landlords. I hate crappy landlords, you know, get rid of them all in the cities that they don't deserve to be in.
Yep.
And really try and help them there, because if we do a good enough job, then the developers can start to come in. I'm not ignorant enough to think that we can change a city without other factors. I won't get into, you know, immigration, everything, and why this is just going to be an ongoing thing, like that, you know, in any of these cities is going to be good. Like we have high cap rate, low vacancy cities in Ontario. You go to the States, they go, well, that's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
We mean high cap rate, low vacancy cities, right? We're in a very fortunate country. We have, you know, we're 10% as populated than the United States, and the United States is 10% as populated as most second and third world nations. So we have 1% population of what most nations do, with the most resources outside of, if you're going to take away oil from Saudi Arabia, Canada has the most resources in the entire world.
And the biggest landmass.
Yeah,
I mean,
second,
other than
yeah,
Russia.
100, exactly.
Yeah.
And half of theirs is ice, so, you know.
Yeah,
and so is
exactly.
ours. But 100%.
One third.
Yeah, and so this country, I think, as a whole, I mean, there's issues in every country, but like, if you just take countries as a dividend, I know developed nations are going to develop much faster over the next decade, but in terms of security, Canada is an unbelievable investment.
Well, and that's why people come here from all over the world and just say, "Oh, I can just buy something here and just sit on it, and even if doesn't go up, I'm just happy my money's there because I know nobody is going to take it from me."
Yeah, and the bank continues. One of the good things, and we struggle with, or I do as a newer investor, I don't have the equity that you have, so we're always trying to race with banks and be like, okay, how do we make this work? Because we're still in the building phase, right? Like, people are like, oh, you're doing so much, but we're building, right?
I'm still building too.
Well, yeah.
I'm collecting, actually. I'm not building.
You're a little further.
I just collect.
Yeah, but so ours, like, you know, we try to dance around, we just try to get deals done at this stage, and you know, the government, and which is good, has some serious restrictions on what can and can't be done, especially with first lenders, B lenders, which everybody needs to go over to. Private world, there's more flexibility, but it's still more strict in the United States. I can go to the States right now with my experience, and I'm an American citizen, probably raise $1 billion in a month. And I'm not even kidding, just because the stuff they do out there is insane.
Well, and you wouldn't even need to. Basically, you get 3 houses, you go to a community bank. I mean, we had my buddy Jeff Borum on here, and that's what he does. And they basically lend him 110% of everything he buys.
Imagine.
Yeah. And he's buying single-family homes all day long, right?
Yeah.
And he can buy undervalued. And I mean, I was like, okay, great. I want to buy some multifamily down there. He's in Tampa. And I'm looking at that, and I'm talking to people, I'm networking, and I'm like, there's no deals down here. Like, this isn't, like, you're not getting a deal. Like, it's not like I can go buy a single-family home for $70,000, put 10 grand into it, and it's worth 120. Like, there's not, like, the deal, right? I'm like, maybe I just don't do that there. Maybe I'm buying single-family or duplexes, and then I don't know, but I haven't done that yet, but I've been looking at it. So
it's a great question, and I don't even know yet, because I see that too, just going on Zillow. I love the resources they have open to everybody, because I'm not an agent.
It's a lot more open, right?
So yeah, but the problem is you'll see a home, you're like, oh, it's 120, and then, oh, it's $2 million, and it's the same road. So you see where there could be margin gains, but I don't know how everything seems a little bit different out there, and there's many more leveling off. Like, builders come into a city when they're under 8% vacancy and are like, this is prime for building, and then it jumps to 10 to 12 and they're like, all right, we're out. And it can cause a little mini recessions in places that you don't have in a more, like, we got 5 banks. I like to look at Canada as like a big franchise, right? You go from city to city, it's the same restaurants, the same groups, and they have to, because even like, you go to a town of 10,000, we need the same medical equipment that we would in Toronto, which is great overall, right? But there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So
we agree. Canada's good. Yeah. 26 years old. You have 2 businesses on the go.
Yeah. So that's probably where I left when my landscaping company, a few months in, I thought I was making a ton. It's like, we brought in like, I think, 8,000 cash in the first month, right? Not cash, it was on the books. But I remember telling the owner, and he's like, okay, what are your margins? And I was like, what's a margin? Right? Like, I had and it's stupid, but no clue. And he's like, well, what are your margins? Hey, you brought in 8K, what's your margins? Like, that's what I mean. I'm like, I don't know, like 7K? And he's like, you don't know what you're talking about, but keep going, right? So And that's what I did. I took the jump a little too early. One of the things I've always been able to do is set unrealistic expectations and not be discouraged by any problems that come up. And that, again, comes from my childhood in acting, being told and enforced that you're a special human being. I work with a bunch of my buddies who went to Richard Ivey School of Graduate Business. They're way smarter than me. They'll dance around me, right? But they're in the top of their class with 15 other guys. And even when they're trying the hardest, if you see a few guys that are even on your level, right? You're kind of like, it doesn't make you feel as special. So my ignorance has made me feel special in those ways. And then being able to see those, special people that people think are put on a pedestal, the Charlie Sheens, all these guys. And when you meet them, you realize they're normal people. Yeah, they're
people.
Yes.
Everyone's just people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They might believe in themselves a little more, especially Charlie. My God. I don't think anybody believes in himself more than that guy. But, that's half the battle right there, right?
Yeah. So landscaping companies, you don't know your numbers.
Don't know my numbers. Left. And the first.
So you quit your job.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Got right into
27.
It. Yeah.
I made $8,000 gross. Screw you, boss. I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. And was helping. I was doing, some labor, and had my little brother working at the time as well too. And we were going hard, man, just trying to build a company. And so for the first, I also had a home at the time as well too. So I bought a home a year before. I'll get into that because it's more about real estate. I didn't have the money for a home. So I was going to Hamilton, everything, and I was telling my agent, I'm going to buy 100 homes. He's like, cool. For some reason, he believed me. But, we didn't know how, but he's like, I'm down to go on this journey with you. Yeah. And so this is probably 2012 or 13. I didn't have the money to buy a home in Hamilton. I thought the renovations were too much. So I found one in St. Catharines for 127 grand. Again, had no money. So I'm like, how do I pay for this? How do we get 5% down? I wound up getting 4 other partners involved and paying $2,500 a person to get this property. We wound up, I did the majority of the work, let's say. And so when we did sell it, I wound up the next year selling it for 165 and then paying out the partners like 300% return. And they went and did their own thing and then got into the next home from there. How I left work was, like you said, the $8,000 a month. The next month I was like, I'm done, like 2 weeks notice. Went out and grinded out the business and learned a lot from there. I started reading already for about a year or so at that point. And the first year revenue, we only did like 40,000. Probably, we bought equipment and stuff, but we were working in it. You don't have enough money there yet. But what we did the following years, we went to 170,000, then 307, then 700, and we were doubling every single year, but not making money because we're investing back in marketing and buying equipment. And it's a low margin industry, but it's one that everybody gets into. So about year 3, I wound up transitioning more into real estate because the healthy vending company I wound up selling to one of our partners. It just wasn't what we wanted to do. And I really always wanted to, because of Rich Dad Poor Dad, keep my focus on real estate. And I always had the idea of building out a company. I was like, I have the property management team, the construction team. Like I had 6 properties and I hired a full-time property manager because I didn't want to deal with tenants. I knew I would lose money, but for some reason I was okay. I was okay with it. And I was like, well, I'll sell where I need to and then fund the staff and we'll keep going.
So you would sell some of the properties to pay and then, yeah.
Exactly. And that was never the goal. It was always to hold them.
Yeah.
But, this project's taking too long, this is happening. And, first few years in real estate renovations, you have no idea what you're doing. Like you're trying to, even if you do projects, you got to learn by the, fire. And I didn't have anyone really experienced there. So that was a little negligence on my part because you got to have the right people there. But the deals still worked. Like they work, but you can't do them at volume like that. Like we're running 25 plus sites at a time right now. There's no way we were doing 1 or 2, and it's like so messy.
Yeah.
And so it took until 2018. I had some issues that wound up getting into a really messy legal situation. And so from there, I basically had to start over, as crazy as that is, at 2018. And that's when I made at the end of 2018, going into 2019. And that's when I made the decision to now partner up because I was more convinced than ever that I was going to do exactly what I wanted to do and that nothing was going to stop me and that my system was good. I just had some issues in my system that were now gone, fortunately. And I joined up with the people for years. I've had my brokers like, hey, can we partner, do whatever? And I didn't chase money. I chased mindset. Yep. And that was the biggest thing because I was like, if they believe it, then if you believe, you can achieve. As corny as that sounds.
Easy their secret.
The reasoning behind that, again, is all like, we have to be on the same page. If you're not on the same page, you're not going to get anything done. Doesn't matter if they have all the money in the world.
So 2018, 0.
Pretty much. We had properties, but they were you held up, and yeah, zero. I lost all my money. I had about 6, close 7 figures in properties that were not in my name. All of it gone. And so starting over.
Starting over 2018.
Yeah, end of 20, early 20.
Now we're into 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 years.
Yep.
What's happened in those 2 years? Like, so just give me quick numbers, then we'll go into the story.
Cool. So in 2 years, we've accumulated over 300 units, and we have over 85% of our properties complete at this point. So 85% of the units filled. We have 85%.
Filled and refinance.
Sorry, no. Oh. We are repurposing a lot of that debt right now, trying to before Christmas, which is always interesting.
Yeah.
But we have about 85% of our inventory complete. We have about 70% of our inventory filled. Now, the reason we have basically a 2.5 week lead time average right now with property management, which is good for all intents and purposes, but we are, 30, 40 showings a week. We're doing criminal checks, background checks on every single one as well, too. Obviously, we use a CRM, so we're really dialing all that in. And now we've got 3 full-time property managers and 1 part-timer, so it really helps. Now you can start to go, okay, who's good at this? Okay, you handle AR. Who's good at this? And so we can build it out like an actual company now, which is nice and fun. Yeah. But that's what we've done in that period of time. And honestly, the first year was a huge struggle as well, too, because I went from being good to not being able to fund my payroll the next week, and had a lot of support, more mentally than anything, but from my partners and friends, just understanding that I've given everything, right? And they knew that, and my bank account knew that too. So they understood the situation, and unfortunately, some got dragged in, right? And it was what it was. It was all a learning experience, and probably the best thing that could have happened. I hope for the other side too. But the best thing that could have happened, because even though everybody lost, I wouldn't have been able to make the moves and educate myself further and go through that fire that I needed to. I needed to have some of that adversity. Even now, you go, okay, well, have you refinanced your homes? No, that's our adversity, right? Our adversity is now working with banks and different people to get the financing in a shorter period of time that they're complete, because it takes so long. But if we didn't have that adversity, what else would be there? So I know something's coming. Just give it to me and we're going to run over it. And that's the approach.
Where's Robby going now?
Yeah. It's 2021. We've got some big expectations. Repurposing a lot of our debt right now. And so all the completed units, moving that over to first lenders is huge for us. And then our targets actually next year is basically we want to 4x from where we are in terms of total holdings. Now, you might be like, okay, cool, impressive, you did that in this period of time, but how are you able to do that? And one of the things that I think that we have an advantage of is, number one, we're now back into cities that people are not exploding on, so I can find a lot of inventory.
Where?
Sudbury is a big one, and there's some other ones that we're gonna, by end of Q1, that we're gonna look to get into. I can tell you offline, and we're going in there too, and we're trying to go in. We're gonna help the mayors, and help the mayors. We're gonna go in and discuss with the mayors first, and see what subsidies and things are available. Because we're gonna go in and be like, I've got friends who are in real estate, like a lot of, and they're not partners with me, but they'll definitely buy real estate where we're going, especially on the commercial side, because I'm a small homes guy, and I'll get into why that works for us. But that we have a lot of inventory that we can choose in these cities. And when we deal with single families, for instance, that are an 8% cap rate, here's my logic on it. One of my partners, Dylan, he's commercial, right? And you do an amazing job of commercial as well. And I love it. My only thing is I didn't have the money to start commercial. I come up with different ideas all the time, so I'm hell-bent myself on being like, listen, stick to what you know here and just maximize that. Maybe people aren't doing it this way, but if it works for you, go. If the banks are going to fund it, go.
As long as the banks will refinance you, who cares?
Exactly. And then what they care about most is debt servicing, right? And for all that you don't know, the biggest thing is 1.2 debt servicing or more for commercial. That's what they're going to look at. If you don't know what that is, you probably won't, but look it up.
We'll put it down in Investopedia for everyone. I'll put it in a linked comment.
Yeah. So and so my thing is, like, you go to Sudbury right now, high cap rate, low vacancy. Their median income, family median income, is also extremely high. Family median income is like $82,000. The average price of a home is $310,000, $315,000. So you're like, there's a disconnect in the market, and it's a 2.1% vacancy. We have the nicest homes in the city. I'm biased, but we have the nicest homes in those areas in the city. And so 2.1%, even under 6, nothing's going to hurt us there. We're always going to have our units filled. But the single families, if I buy 20 single families, so we had 8 accepted offers last week. If I buy those and they're vacant, I can get in, I can renovate them in 4 to 6 weeks, barring that there's no renovations, and all at the same time. So now I've got 8 new tenants at the market prices, whereas we got a building in Hamilton we got to turn over. It's got 20 tenants in there, and it'll take about a year and a half and a ton of work.
Oh, yeah.
And the amount of management time, that's what I think of. Because I'm like, what does it really cost to get a tenant out? It's not $5,000. And I'm going on the higher side, but I'm like, each tenant, for our agents to know, costs us about $15,000, $20,000 to repurpose. And we are as nice as, like, we'll pay out tenant a lot of money. We're very generous. Can we set you up in a better place? Because a lot of times, like, you guys shouldn't be living here. It's disgusting. Can we put you in one of our other units? We'll pay you more. Whatever we can do to make it work. But even that negotiation, if it goes 6 months, 8 months, the amount of money you're out on rent, then the money you're out for cash and keys, then relisting, and the time and energy spent from the management team is unbelievable. 90%, so we have 25 work sites, half of them right now are permitted. 90% of our work, conservatively, is on the permitted sites from a management perspective. So Sudbury, again, because these homes are already in good condition, we don't need to get permits there because we're not changing things.
Just, there's no structural, it's just cosmetic, and you're just in and out quick.
And an 8% cap rate on a single family. So I don't care if it's an apartment building or not. I know with 20 single families, A, I probably own more land, and B, if it's 8% plus cap rate, I don't care. C, it's more liquid. 15 years ago, you couldn't do this. Pre-CRMs and internet being where it is, you couldn't do this. You'd send somebody to each door. So that's a little bit unique part about it, which works. The downfall is obviously, somebody can buy one building and they're matching what we purchased in 2 months. Also, the other downfall is the administrative side. It's an administrative nightmare on refinances for banks. And looking at this, we got to tell a good story for them to want to work on it, because they're like, we'll send over one package and you're like, $5 million, but you have
it's tough.
20 homes.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to do all this work?
Your file's this thick, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I know it's tough. I know that. I mean, I was looking at doing like a mini REIT with stuff like that way back when, and like the financing challenges were it was just too complicated. I just screw it, I'll just buy apartment buildings.
And I didn't know getting into it, which is often the case. So, and that was it. Like I said, I don't get discouraged from there. I was like, there's got to be a way to work, because even when I started buying them, they're like, you could only buy 3 or 4. And now you can only buy 8 or 10. And I was like, but Kiyosaki has 7,000 units.
States are different.
They are, but there's always a way where there's, and then when you get on the commercial side and you get there, then it's like, okay, well, now they care about the team or debt servicing and
your experience, for sure. Yep. And the more you get, the easier it is. The more you can cookie cutter it for them, the easier it becomes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Send them the package they're looking for before they ask.
Yeah. So you're going to go to 1,200 units? Is that the...
Yeah, we basically, I mean, we have a numerical figure and a revenue. One of the things I'm chasing right now is high margin revenue, right? One of the things, and I was saying this, and I say with all due respect, I did a couple courses and I've had the luxury of speaking with guys like Ty Lopez in the States who've been very influential, even though they're in a different space. And he's always kind of argued the point, like, you're never going to have a high revenue business in real estate. And he's right. You can have 100 million in holdings and do 5 to 8 million in revenue, which for the size of that is not a lot. It sounds like a lot of money, but for the size of holdings you'd have to have.
Yeah, if you have a $100 million business,
you would think.
Yeah,
you're definitely doing more than 5 million revenue.
You're doing probably minimum 20 to 25 million.
Exactly, and a healthy margin. So one of the things, like, this used to be the case, and which was a hedge as well too, right? Because some people might look at what I do as risky, and granted, there's risk involved, but my real risk is my infrastructure, which is not tied to the holdcos of the partners. Yeah. So I'm at risk that I can't pay for my infrastructure. The holdcos are not at risk, and the larger I'm able to build out my infrastructure, the more insulated and better the service to the holdcos are. Yeah. So that is the insulated risk. But going to St. Catharines before, again, when it was an 8+% cap rate city, you could almost, as you're putting some money down, borrow privately once it's rented out, cash flow, until you're not panicked about getting a refinance very quickly. That's even true. If you're using private capital when you have high cash flow. And in Sudbury, we're dealing with, to get into the numbers, depending on the property, single family, duplex, whatever. If you're going to go from a business perspective, after management fees, 30 to 40% net margins a month. So, where do you get that in real estate? And one of the things I hear a lot of people saying in the GTA, especially Toronto buyers, like, I'm increasing my net worth. So you're gambling with the market, right? Like, and that's fine. I'm not against, like, Toronto's probably going to go up for sure. And a price per square footage, we go back to the macro, you're like, no, you were way undervalued. Canadian, like, you're actually like 400, 500, 600 US a square foot. You go to other places, 1,000 US, because they look in US dollars. The world looks in US dollars. So I'm not doubting that these are undervalued still, even though people might argue that. What I am going to say is it doesn't cost that much to build it. So it's all perception, it's all psychology at this point. In my markets, when we have mini recessions, or 2017 happened, is very different. What happens when people lose equity in the higher price target markets? They start looking for other opportunities, the smart guys. So they start going to other areas, and that's what kind of builds it up.
That's how I got to Cornwall.
There, yeah, and Cornwall's great. Yeah, were you in there a while ago?
Oh, I've been there a long time.
Yeah, too rich for my blood now, but yeah, you good. Yeah.
Mine too.
Yeah, exactly. But so, for years in St. Catharines, I understood the demographics and the low vacancy and all that. Private lenders didn't want to go there. That was always I hear the same stuff in Sudbury, although some go out there now. I guarantee you it's coming, and I'm obviously biased, but when I look at those, I'm like, what you're lending on is risky. You giving that $500,000 private loan to that doctor, who is a doctor full-time trying to build his house, it might turn out well.
Well, it turns out well because they'll just go after his income.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the whole difference, right? Yeah.
But it's a lot of things can go wrong, and I think that those, despite it seeming risky, mine's actually a risk adverse. And when there's been little hiccups, those markets have actually gone up. Well,
you're running more of an American model. You're figuring out how to run the American model here.
It's
like if you look at Meet Kevin and stuff like that, that's the model they're running.
Okay.
You're running that model here, and that's kind of the model I wanted to run way back when, but I didn't pursue it enough to make it happen, and then I just got into apartment buildings, and it's just way easier and for me, and it's simpler, and I don't have to work as hard. No,
and you're more say, like I said, you have a lot more equity than us. So the difference too is that we're gonna get but we're gonna get to that stage where it's like, okay, inevitably some of the cash flows will have to shift into commercial. Right now these are cheap, they're easy to buy, and we can handle a large volume. But for sure, like that's coming, and that's the machine we're trying to set up. The one thing I wanted to get away from though is eventually we got to make money. Yeah. Like nobody takes money right now. We're building something, so I support myself on fees and stuff. Like I have all this and it's there, but at the same time, I don't have money sitting in my account just chilling. That's not possible. I will hire before that happens. So that's kind of the key, and we're trying to build that machine. And if you have the high net margins, it supports everything else. And we have the luxury in Canada of being able to do that. Like we're not collecting our rent with a gun.
Yeah.
And in some areas in the States to do that, you would have to do that. And I think that's what makes this work. I don't focus on the capital appreciation. That's the third aspect. I like flat markets where I can know where we go. We do have the BRRRR model, although we're not following it to a T in Sudbury because it's so undervalued that if an appraiser wants to tell me I'm overpaying, I'm going to tell him he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. So, or I won't say that. I'll just continue on and
Thank
go.
you.
Thank you and keep going. So it's a BRRRR model, and now really we're looking to increase revenue, high margin revenue, to build out a large business like that.
Cool, man. Well, it's going to be interesting to have you back on in a year, and we can do a year in review of Robby.
Hopefully I'm back before that, but if you let me. So.
Yeah, for sure. But thanks for coming in. I mean, I think this was very inspirational. I hope everybody got some good value out of this. If you guys do like these types of things, please, subscribe, smash the like button for a child star that's now a real estate entrepreneur. And thanks everyone. Have a great day.